This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning and Happy New Year, everyone. Today's organizational, finance, committee, and regular meetings of the Hudson River Black River Regulating District is occurring virtually as well as from our Sacandaga Field office in Mayfield and our Hudson River area office in Albany, with most board members and staff joining remotely and members of the public able to do so as well. The board meeting agenda is available at HRBRRD.ny.gov under board meetings. We ask that you please close other programs on your computer or phone, silence your cell phone, and mute your audio when not speaking. The conference organizer will monitor the program's chat function for public comment. Comments may also be emailed to HRAO@HRBRRD.New.York.gov. We'll begin this morning's meeting with our annual organizational meeting with our first order of business, the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Our first order of business is our organizational meeting, and I call that to order. Motion. I'm sorry.
Roll call.
Roll call.
Mark Finkel.
Here.
Albert Hayes.
Here.
Timothy Reagan.
Here.
Jeffrey Rosenthal is excused. Kenneth DeWitt.
Here.
Richard Byrd.
Here.
Alfred Candido Jr.
Here.
John Callahan.
Here.
Robert Leslie, present. Stephanie Ruzicki.
Here.
Robert Fulton.
Here.
And Timothy Minicha.
Here.
All accounted for.
Thank you. Next, I need a motion to adopt the meeting agenda.
I'd like to make a motion that we, can I do that now?
Point of order, this is just for the organizational meeting,
The organization.
Mr. Reagan.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
We're still looking for a motion to adopt the agenda for
Right.
the organizational meeting.
I'll make that motion.
Mr.
Is
Reagan.
there a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. DeWitt.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? We move on to the election of officers. Can we read the slate, please?
For the slate of the election for the officers for the chairman, we have Mr. Mark Finkel for chairman. And do we have any other nominations or anything? There are no more nominations, and can I have a motion to elect Mark Finkel as chairman?
I will. I'll make that.
Mr. Reagan seconds. And anybody else seconding that?
I'll second that.
Mr. DeWitt.
Congratulations.
Okay, I guess
Now
we have to
for-
call for the vote.
Yep. Vote on that.
I'm sorry, this is a little awkward. Do we do each position separately, or can we do them as a group?
Each separately.
Okay, then we got to call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Well, thank you, everybody. Next, Albert.
And now we have the nomination for second vice chairperson.
First vice chair.
First vice chairman. Nomination of Mr. Jeffrey Rosenthal. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Mr. DeWitt,
Any second?
I'll second.
Mr. Reagan,
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Congratulations, Mr. Rosenthal. Now for a second vice chair. And we have Mr. Kenneth DeWitt. Do we have any motion?
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Reagan,
Have a second?
Second.
Mr. Byrd,
We have all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. DeWitt.
Thank you.
Now, put it to the secretary, treasurer.
right, Mark should be able to go back to those.
Okay.
Chairman Finkel, we're up to the appointment of secretary, treasurer, and assistant secretaries and treasurer.
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm having trouble hearing you.
Okay.
What's next?
Would you like Mr. Hayes to take over that responsibility?
Yes, that'd be great.
Okay, for secretary, we have Mr. Leslie. For treasurer, we have Mr. Manicia. And for assistant secretary, treasurer, Mr. Fultan.
And
We don't have,
motion, second, and vote.
do we have a motion on that?
I'll make that motion.
Do they have
I'll
a
second
second?
that. I'll second that.
All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Congratulations, all. We have the
Thank you.
designation.
Thank you, Mr. Hayes, for helping me with that. That was very good. Thank you.
You're more than welcome, Chairman.
Next,
And
we have the designation.
Official
I'm sorry.
newspaper. We have,
Yep.
we have the Times Union, Daily of Albany, and we have the Watertown Daily Times, Watertown. Do we have a motion on that?
I'll make that motion.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor? Say aye.
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 Approved. Thank you. I don't have, do you want to?
Well, that's supposed to be by a roll call vote, which would be Mr. Finkel in affirmative. Mr. Rosenthal is excused. Mr. Hayes,
Aye.
Mr. DeWitt,
Aye.
Mr. Byrd,
Aye.
Mr. Candido,
Aye.
and Mr. Reagan.
Aye.
Passes unanimously.
Well, the Watertown Times is not daily anymore. It's only 6 days a week.
Oh, 6 days a week?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I think it's still called the Watertown Daily Times, though.
It is.
Yeah.
You got the right name.
And you want the tentative dates of board meetings?
Yes.
Make a motion for tentative dates of the board meetings. In February, there'd be no meeting scheduled. If a special board meeting is necessary, it will be Tuesday, February 8th, 2022. On Tuesday, March 8th, 2022, Old Forge or Inlet, Black River area. Tuesday, April 12th, 2022, Mayfield, Albany, HR area. Tuesday, May 10, 2022, Mayfield, Albany, HR area. Tuesday, June 14, 2022, Watertown, Black River area. Tuesday, July 12, 2022, Mayfield, Albany, Hudson River area. August, there's no meeting scheduled. If a special board meeting is necessary, it would be held on Tuesday, August 9, 2022. Tuesday, September 13, 2022, Mayfield, Albany, Hudson River area. Wednesday, October 12th, 2022, Lowville, Black River area. Wednesday, November 9, 2022, Mayfield, Albany, Hudson River area. In December, there'll be no meeting scheduled. If a special board meeting is necessary, it will be Tuesday, December 6, 2022. Okay, I have a motion on that.
I will.
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Reagan,
I have a second.
Second.
Mr. Byrd.
All in favor, say aye.
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 I would note that a further notice clarifying each meeting will be published in accordance with the open meetings law. The board approved the motion setting tentative dates by unanimous vote. Obviously, those dates may change if at a later date, different dates are needed.
I turned not.
Any
back
other
over to-
board member questions or comments? If not,
Yeah.
I'll ask for a motion to adjourn the organizational meeting for 2022.
I will make that motion.
Mr. Hayes,
I'll second.
We have
it.
a second?
Mr. DeWitt.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you, and thank you again, Mr. Hayes.
Welcome.
We will move on to our Finance Committee. Mr. DeWitt.
Yes, I'd like to call the Finance Committee meeting to order. And can I have a motion to adopt the revised meeting agenda?
I will make that motion.
Mr. Hayes. Anybody second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Reagan. I would note that the same members present at the organizational meeting are present in this Finance Committee meeting. Committee members, Albert Hayes, Timothy Reagan, and Kenneth DeWitt, with the board chair as ex officio.
Thank you. Any discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion approved. Can I have a motion to approve of June 8th regular board meeting minutes?
Finance Committee meeting minutes.
Oh, yeah, Finance Committee meeting.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Mr. Hayes, Mr. Reagan.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion approved. Can I have a motion to advance to the full board and recommend adoption of resolution to contract with Harris Beach PLLC to provide bond counsel services? Mr. Minuccia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We bring this resolution to the Finance Committee in accordance with its charter, which states that the purpose of the Finance Committee is to oversee the regulating district's debt and debt practices and to recommend policies concerning the authority's issuance and management of debt. It also calls for the committee to make recommendations concerning the appointment and compensation of bond counsel, investment advisors, and underwriting firms used by the regulating district and to oversee the work performed by these individuals and firms on behalf of the authority. I'm sure all members of the committee recall that the multi-year financial plan that we recommended and was adopted by the board in June assumed a public sale of tax-exempt bonds during the upcoming fiscal year to finance important investments in infrastructure at Hawkinsville and Indian Lake. A successful issuance by any state or local government is a team effort. regulating district has an existing agreement with Fiscal Advisors and Marketing, its municipal advisor. The agreement with its prior bond counsel had expired, so we initiated a competitive procurement in November to identify a skilled and experienced replacement. 5 firms submitted proposals. A team consisting of myself, General Counsel Rob Leslie, and Compliance Officer Stephanie Rizicki independently scored the proposals on a technical basis. When scores for the cost of providing the services was incorporated, the firm Harris Beach was the highest scorer. Harris Beach was very competitive on both technical and cost grounds and represents what we believe is the best value for the regulating district as it undertakes this critical action. For these reasons, we ask the committee to approve this resolution and to recommend the regulating district board do so as well. As always, I'm happy to answer any questions the members may have.
If there aren't any questions, I'd like a motion to advance to the full board and recommend adoption of resolution to contract with Harris Beach PLLC to provide bond counsel services. Can I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Reagan,
Second?
I'll second that.
Mr. Hayes.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion approved. Can I have a motion to adjourn the Finance Committee meeting?
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Reagan,
I'll second that.
Mr. Hayes.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion approved.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We will move right to the regular board meeting. I'd like to call the January meeting of the Hudson River Black River Regulating District to order. Roll call, Mr. Leslie.
Board Chairman Mark Finkel,
Here.
Board members Albert Hayes
Here.
and Timothy Reagan,
Here.
Executive Director John Callahan,
Here.
General Counsel Robert Leslie, here, Compliance Officer Stephanie Rizicki,
Here.
First Vice Chair Jeffrey Rosenthal, excused, Second Vice Chair Kenneth DeWitt,
Here?
Board members Richard Byrd
Here.
and Alfred J. Candido Jr.,
Here.
Chief Engineer Robert Fultan,
Here.
and Chief Fiscal Officer Timothy Mnuchin.
Here.
All accounted for, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Leslie. We need a motion to revise the meeting agenda, and the revision is we are eliminating item 8D, the first reading of the resolutions. So I need a motion to revise the meeting agenda.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that.
Do we have a
motion.
any discussion?
Who seconded
All in
that
favor?
motion?
I'm sorry.
Mr. DeWitt. Mr. DeWitt was the second.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. Since I have no list, is there anyone who wishes to speak in the public comment period?
Mr. Chairman, let me ask our administrator, board administrator, Gina Bowman, if anybody has messaged her through the chat function
Sure.
and requested to speak.
No, I've not received any notification of anyone wishing to speak.
Thank you, Gina.
Okay. I
Mr.
need
Kelly.
approval of our November 9th, 2021 regular board meeting minutes.
Let me just pause, Mr. Chairman, if I may. It sounded like Mr. Leslie was looking to interject.
Yeah, there was one person who had indicated in the chat function an interest in getting a copy of the revised agenda. The agenda at that point of the comment hadn't been revised. The only revision is the removal of the recitation of those resolutions. We're first reading those resolutions. That
HP.
agenda is on our website.
Thank you, Councilor. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Also, it now, Mr. Masursik indicated an interest in speaking.
Oh, okay.
Merzak? I believe that you're referring to me, Ted Merzak.
Yes.
Okay. It's my understanding that you just revised the agenda and you will not be reading the proposed changes to the agreement. That was the 8D, as I understand it.
That is correct.
Okay, so I would like to make this statement. I'm a member of the SBC board, and I would like to make this statement on behalf of the board. The SBC wants to thank the board for listening to our concerns regarding the proposed reading of the draft statement. Because the past proposed attempts to change the permit system rules resulted in considerable animosity from the lake community stakeholders, the SBC believes it is imperative that any updates have a full and transparent vetting with the lake community stakeholders. The SBC is looking forward to that dialogue with the board. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Anybody else? Or then if not, we'll move for the approval of the November 9th regular board meeting minutes. I need a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Mr. DeWitt?
Any revisions or corrections or discussions?
Any second?
I'll second.
Mr. Reagan?
Okay, now I'll ask. Any revisions, corrections, or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Report of our executive director, Mr. Callahan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning and Happy New Year again, everyone. I assume somebody will stand up and shout if they cannot hear me, but hopefully I'm coming through. In recognition of a robust agenda to begin the new year, I'll simply note, Mr. Chairman, that my report appears on page 16. I also just want to briefly note just a couple of things as I communicated late last week to the board. We are up and running with the second year of our online access permit payment system. And I indicated at that time a heavy level of volume despite the physical renewals just having gone out in the mail. That was thanks in no small part to some messaging we did, communication using our social media channels, and also our constant contact email list. We got 5,400 reaches on our Facebook post, just letting people know that this was open for their use again this year, and over 3,000 reaches through our email list. And the results already, just not even a week into it, we've had nearly 1,000 people renew online, and we're up over $66,000 in permit revenue so far this year. A great benefit to our customers. And I want to thank, we made a number of improvements. This is a proposal that the board has been very interested in for a long time. We didn't rest on our laurels. We made it better for this year. I want to thank especially Danielle Thorne, Stephanie Rozicki, and Stephanie Porter for working hand in glove with our consultant to make some improvements in terms of not just external customers, but internal customers, because this has got to work for both ends. And of course, Gina Bowman on the communication side, helping to refine our FAQs and getting these messages out. So off to a good start. We appreciate the board's support, leadership, and moving this initiative forward. And certainly it's going to be continuous improvement. We'll continue to make that better year after year. Just want to also briefly note that we're again working with the 109th Airlift Wing based in Scotia to do some ice survival training, probably early in February if conditions continue to permit. And it's just a great opportunity to help support the important mission that they perform, not just in terms of our defense, but supporting the research projects in Antarctica. So we're very excited to be doing that again, and I'll pause there, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, for any questions anyone may have.
Any questions or comments for Mr. Callahan? Thank you, and speedy recovery, of course.
Thank you.
Next, a presentation of Kleinschmidt, the project summary on the Hawkinsville Dam remediation.
Good morning, all. This is Tyler Kreider. I assume you can hear me. I'll see if I can keep this view looking towards you. I appreciate the opportunity to present this morning at the request of the Executive Director to provide an update on the Hawkinsville Dam project, since this project is one that has been going on for a while, and it's my understanding that some members of the board may not be familiar with this project and the upcoming rehabilitation work that has been proposed. And so I will be presenting today to the Hudson River Black River Regulating District on this project, and we'll start out with apologies here as I get the keys working. Presentation overview will include a background on the project from the initial New York State DEC letter, turning towards a dam remediation plan and what has been done to date and what is being proposed for the future, and then take a look at what the next steps are. For those that are not familiar with the location of this project, it's located near the center of New York on the Black River, upstream from Lyons Falls, and it's north of Utica and southeast of Fort Drum. As you can see in the lower right-hand figure, the Hawkinsville Dam is at the location of the yellow pin. The Black River at this location does indeed flow to the north and northwest, and the west abutment over here currently has a grass access route coming off and parallel to Woodgate Drive with access in at that location. There's some existing fencing around a structure there on the west abutment. The east abutment has a small pull-off and parking area that's gravel that is actually inside this treed and forested area. The impoundment itself proceeds approximately 1.3 miles or in excess of that upstream, and with a series of residential homes along that area, as well as additional wetlands and additional ancillary infrastructure at that point. The area downstream of the dam can be visualized in this figure is primarily bedrock and large boulders, and I'll provide a few additional photos for those that have not been to this site or stood at this location. The left figure and as well as the upper right figure are both shown looking at the west abutment. You can see the grass access drive coming in, some riprap along the shoreline below the dam, and then a long continuous spillway across the dam itself. On the lower right-hand side, you can see the eastern abutment, where there's a concrete abutment, some riprap placed along the shoreline, both upstream and downstream of the dam itself. And you'll see in a later photo some of the conditions of the abutment itself. It is forested out to the road in the parking area there with several mature trees that appear to have been there for many decades. So the initiation of this project began in 2007 when the regulating district received a letter from New York State Dam Safety regarding certain deficiencies at this facility. At the time, the structure was classified as a Class B hazard, for which the regulations required a spillway design flow of 150% of the 100-year flood. That flood at the time was a 21,450 cubic feet per second flood, and it was deemed to be deficient in passing that adequately under the current design. There was also a note that there was the low-level outlet was not functional due to the fact that this dam structure was built in 1915. It's our understanding that that has at some point become unfunctional. I don't know the details of that, but at the time of the letter, that low-level outlet was not functional, which would have provided means to draw the impoundment down should a risk have been identified on the dam structure itself. So since 2007, there was a preliminary assessment that was completed by a consulting firm to look at some of the hydraulics and what some initial costing might incur for some of the alternatives that were evaluated. The initial evaluation did include an assessment of rehabilitation of the structure in order to comply with dam safety regulations, as well as removal of the structure in order to provide and remove the structure entirely from the river and restore a free-flowing river to this location, which would have had some implications on the sediment that is upstream of the dam, as well as on the adjoining homeowners, and I'll go over a few of those. In 2014, sorry, I should mention in about 2012, there was a follow-up study that was completed to take those hydraulics to another level, as well as complete a final assessment of the two options that were identified. Through that review, it was determined that the hydraulic modeling indicated that the downstream the downstream bridge was actually a hydraulic control, and the structure could be reclassified such that it only had to meet 100% of the 100-year flood. However, the dam was still deemed to be deficient at that time. In 2014, August of 2014, Kleinschmidt completed the alternatives analysis, looking more completely at those alternatives. And with that, I'll walk through some of the existing conditions and then look at those alternatives. So as noted, the low-level outlet was inoperable in the existing condition. That is still the case today. As shown in the photo here to the right, during flood flow, the flood waters actually bypass the design spillway and come around that eastern abutment through this wetland and forested area. That was not deemed to be acceptable by New York State DEC. That is one of the things that will be addressed as part of the rehabilitation for this facility. So the first alternative identified in this decision matrix table from a prior presentation to this board was the removal of the infrastructure in its entirety. This would comply with the regulation, as well as provide additional restoration of fish passage, habitat diversity, and some geomorphology to this region. It would indeed reduce the flooding, as the dam would no longer be in place, and potentially improve some whitewater boating opportunities and remove those public safety concerns around the dam. However, there are some substantial cons that were identified along with this alternative, including the need to manage the sediment upstream, as well as the additional bank stability concerns for the residential and adjoining owners that would be there, and some potential impacts to stormwater outfalls, drinking wells, and the impoundment recreation would be lost as well. It may improve some aspects of recreation in the whitewater boating. However, the impoundment would be drained. At the time of the evaluation, this was deemed to have a higher cost, and more regulatory permissions were deemed to be required for that removal, given the impacts to the impoundment. The alternative that was selected is the lower alternative there, which was the remediation of the structure, which also complies with the regulations. It does not require any management of the sediment, and it was deemed to be more aesthetically pleasing to maintain the dam structure and the infrastructure as it currently exists today, as it does reduce the flooding on Edmonds Road near the bridge, and was deemed to have a lower cost and lower regulatory permissions at the time of the assessment. There are a few disadvantages of this alternative in that it does not provide fish passage and still has some slightly higher flood elevations. And with that, some potentially impacts to stormwater outfalls. And it does maintain the current public safety concerns for the facility, of which we will take means to remediate and minimize those as much as possible during this rehabilitation. And as it currently exists, the rehabilitation would maintain those operational and maintenance requirements and additional life cycle costs as this infrastructure would be perpetuated through that remediation. So after that alternatives analysis was completed and the final alternatives analysis, we worked with the Army Corps of Engineers to resolve their wetland fill challenges, given that this eastern embankment did require fill in those wetlands. We worked with them to minimize that to be less than 1/10 of an acre and develop the final design plans for the remediation, culminating in the August 2020 issued for bid drawings and technical specifications. At that time, we submitted for and received in October 2020 Army Corps of Engineers Nationwide Permit Number 3 for maintenance of a structure in a water body. And with that, I will turn to a bit of an overview of what that remediation plan looks like in detail. The district does have these drawings and more detail there in their hands. At this point, we are focusing primarily on the west abutment and the east abutment in order to address the New York State DEC comments, and I'll provide additional detail on each of those in the following slides. At the west abutment, the orange area is an extension of the spillway. This does provide additional spillway capacity and help to reduce the flooding. It ties into the existing dam at this location, and that'll be joined to the existing dam and maintain a similar profile of the spillway out to this new concrete abutment shown in gray. That new concrete abutment will also contain a low-level outlet structure that will be a new structure that will be functional to provide that drawdown capacity. It's a 4-foot by 4-foot sluice gate on the upstream end to a 4-foot steel pipe that will discharge into the tail race or to the downstream receiving water body there. Additionally, there'll be a permanent grass access road coming in off the nearby properties, of which there'll be some chain link fencing and a gate in order to restrict access from the public. On the eastern abutment, there'll be similarly a new concrete dam and abutment and a cutoff wall. The existing abutment will be replaced in its entirety with a new cutoff wall extending into the embankment per New York State dam safety guidelines. We will also be installing or proposing to install a raised earthen embankment along this alignment here. The alignment may look a little bit odd, but that is to avoid the additional costs of wetland mitigation and additional permitting and regulatory challenges that were to be encountered if we were to go that route. This will also include, at DEC's request, a new ADA fishing platform directly adjacent to the abutment to allow individuals to cast into the area right below the dam there, which is known to be a popular fishing spot at this time. This will be a wood structure that'll sit up above the flood elevations and provide ADA access there via a gravel path into that facility from the existing gravel area. As we consider the rehabilitation, the operation and maintenance will be similar to that of the existing infrastructure, with operational needs to exercise the gate twice per year. And the addition will be of some maintenance requirements associated with that earthen embankment, primarily with mowing of that embankment and a need to provide an herbicide treatment of the vegetation growing on the riprap on the east embankment, as well as maintenance of additional site landscaping, parking, and infrastructure, similar to what's there now, recognizing that there's a parking lot that the public can utilize. There'll be some signage, and there'll be the addition of the ADA fishing platform that might require some periodic updates and checking in on that infrastructure. As part of the dam remediation plan, in August 2020, a cost opinion was prepared of $1.96 million in order to provide this rehabilitation as identified there at the western and eastern abutments, and this does not include the contingency there. The construction duration was estimated to be 4 months during a low river flow period, assuming that both abutments were completed simultaneously with 2 crews working on this project. There would be the option to complete these in sequence if coordinated during appropriate river flows and acceptable to the permitting agencies. With that, we'll look forward to the next steps. The Army Corps permits are in hand as of October 2020. New York State Dam Safety, DEC's dam safety permits are still pending, given some permit challenges that they had in receiving the permit, and we're working through those with them and still anticipating that permit to come through. In the first quarter of 2022, we would like to issue the project for bid. I should say the district would be working to issue the project for bid in that time frame, with anticipated construction occurring in Q3 or Q4, or running into Q4 of this year. With that, I would take any questions from the board or other members.
Are there any questions? Comments from the board?
Yeah, I got a question on the public safety concerns remains. I don't know what the public safety concerns are.
So there's always a public safety concern associated with a dam. It is a location where there's a flow over the spillway, that if a boater were to go over top of the spillway, could be conditions that would be present that would not be conducive to passing through that dam and getting kicked out into the downstream water body very easily. Low-head dams are known to be potential public safety hazards and can have some deaths associated with them. However, there are means that can be taken to identify that at launch points, et cetera, such that the public is made aware of those. So the public safety, there'd also be some fall risks with the abutments there, We will be putting up fencing on the western abutment to restrict that access there. On the eastern abutment, there'll be the ADA platform, which will have a railing around it as well. So those would be the primary public safety concerns that I would see at this time.
I got it. I understand what you're talking about now on that. All right,
Okay.
thank you. I have one other question. One other question. Your contingency. Your cost.
Can we just come out of presentation mode also, just so we can see each other? Thank you.
One other question on your contingency. There's no contingency inside of that. If you go over, what happens?
Well, the
Mr. Ray?
contingency is established by the district. The estimate just simply has not made or accounted for the contingency that we would add in to the budget for the project. And Tim, if I'm misspoke, let me know.
No misspeaking. The budgeted amount that we have for this is a few $100,000 greater than the 1.9, almost $2 million that Tyler and Rob have mentioned this morning.
Okay, so you built the contingency in already to our budget, to your budget.
The district budget has contingency. The estimate was made by Kleinschmidt simply did not make an estimate of what we would include. Yes.
Okay.
Can the public ask questions?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, Ray Letterman from the Fulton Chain Lakes Association. Is there any way with these low head dams to build in something in the remediation that would allow fish passage?
Well, there is technology available.
Yeah.
Is used.
Is that done?
I would just note, this is John Callahan speaking, and Mr. Fulton can certainly weigh in here as well, that this is a body of water which is heavily dammed, and this is not an impediment. The upstream of which and downstream of which you've got dozens of miles or even several miles of unfettered access by fish. So it's, this is not the one hydrologic impediment on an otherwise free-flowing river. I just want to note that.
I understand. I was just looking at it from the perspective of if I were, a fishing advocate, I might say this would be a good place to start. You know what I mean? With with making better fishery. I know what you're saying. I'm aware of all the dams. They're up through the Black River very well, and I understand your point. But I was trying to take a little bit different perspective. And anyway, that was my question. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments?
I do have questions, please. As far as land ownership, who actually owns the land that is on the west, on either abutment?
These are state lands under the regulating district's jurisdiction. Mr. Fulton, correct me if I'm wrong, but all of the project boundary for the remediation project itself occurs on New York state land?
We have, and Rob Leslie can maybe comment, we have also acquired the lands necessary to complete the embankment on that east side too.
That is accurate. A number of years ago, we had to acquire an additional piece of property on the eastern embankment from the Black River Environmental something Association, BRRRD. Gilbert, can't remember the guy's name. A major landowner in the area owned a tiny little piece that we had to acquire. It was acquired by by the state of New York and put under the regulating district's jurisdiction.
And additionally, there's state land at the easternmost end of the embankment where the embankment terminates, which is DEC jurisdictional land, including that parking lot that Tyler mentioned.
Okay, so right up until Hawkinsville Road, which would be the access point from the west, then that's state land right up to the county highway? Or is there an easement over private ownership?
No, we have jurisdiction over state land from Hawkinsville Road to the upstream side of the spillway itself and the dam. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I just didn't have knowledge of that. And there's no boat launch that's associated with that parking area, is there?
No, there's a gravel, there's an informal path used by anglers that park at that lot that work their way into the upstream side of the structure.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you.
Very good, thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, I'll just briefly note, Tyler referenced the DEC comments that we received mid-December. We do have a meeting, Mr. Fulton and I, coming up with the consultants and DEC Dam Safety Bureau, and we look forward to working collaboratively with them to resolve those remaining comments and concerns so we keep this project on track.
Very good. Being no more comments, thank Tyler for the presentation. It was very informative, and I want to thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Bill.
Are we ready to? I think we're ready to move on to contracts. So we're at 8A on, if you're following on our agenda, and first contract is a resolution to approve the Sixth Amendment to Contract C-02012 with Kleinschmidt Associates. Mr. Fulton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My memorandum is found on page 17. As was partially explained by Tyler, this project's been in place for and work on this project for some time with Kleinschmidt since about January 2013. Since about September 2014, Kleinschmidt's completed the preliminary design, permitting, and final design. And as mentioned, we now anticipate construction at the end of 22. However, back in 2020, the district anticipated start of construction in the summer of 2020. And the district postponed that beginning of construction in an effort to secure more economical methods for funding a construction project and to realign the anticipated cost with the district's 3-year assessment cycle. As a result of that postponement and start of construction, which was unanticipated by Kleinschmidt, there was some additional, and has been and will be some additional project management and coordination expenses. And an additional to that expense associated with the development of the presentation for the board today. And so we've asked Kleinschmidt to put together a proposal that covers that additional management expense during the period of time that we had postponed construction. And attached to my memorandum is that proposal. The staff recommends acceptance of Kleinschmidt's proposed Amendment 6 revised scope and service proposal and seeks board authorization to amend the contract to include Amendment 6 revised scope of service and seeks authorization from the executive director to increase the contract price by $7,000 to a total contract price of $223,564. And I'd be happy to take any questions if you have any on that.
Any questions or comments? If not, a motion to amend the Sixth Amendment to Contract C-02012 to $7,000.
I'll make
Do
that.
I have a motion?
I will, Mark.
Mr.
Okay,
Byrd?
second.
I'll second.
Any other comments or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have a resolution to approve Conklinville Dam fourth part 12D independent consultant safety inspection contract C032018. Again, Mr. Fulton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My memorandum is on page 20. Back in 2019, the board authorized the hiring of Adam Jones with HDR to complete the independent safety consultant for part 12 inspection, the fourth part 12 inspection of Conklinville Dam. HDR completed that study. It was and FERC has provided comments, several sets of comments. HDR completed development of a protocol for recognizing storm events in response to those comments received from FERC, and HRBRRD also completed verification of the project discharge rating curve and the probable maximum precipitation analysis. We submitted those technical reports. And those technical reports and memorandum were submitted to FERC in March of last year. FERC completed its review and provided additional comments on those technical memoranda. And in those comments, FERC recommended that the consultant should review recent storm events that have occurred and to consider tropical storms that have recently passed through the watershed during the August to September period of 2021. So HDR has provided the district with a scope of services and fee proposal to complete the work necessary to respond to FERC's recommendation to evaluate the potential impact of certain storm events on the project's site-specific probable maximum precipitation study. And HDR proposes to complete that work for a not to exceed fee of $14,000. Attached to my memorandum is both letters from FERC as well as the proposal, and the district staff recommends acceptance of HDR's proposal to complete the work necessary to respond to FERC's recommendations, and seeks board authorization to amend the scope and fee of the contract C03-2018 and authorization for the executive director to execute an amendment which increases the price of the contract by $14,000 to a not to exceed amount of $162,840. I'd be happy to take any questions that you have.
Any questions or comments? If not, a motion to approve to approve the Conklinville Dam fourth part 12D independent consultant safety inspection contract by $14,000. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Reagan?
I have a second.
I'll second that.
Mr.
Do we have any further discussion on this? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
The last contract is resolution authorizing an agreement with Barley Appraisal Services. Mr. Callahan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The board will recall from the October meeting our item to extend the current ground lease and water usage agreement for the hydroelectric facility at Stillwater Dam an additional 3 months. That original 1985 agreement expired December 31st, 2016, but then automatically extended for 5 years to the 31st of this past year. As the board will recall, our agreement requires us, if we cannot agree on terms for a new agreement with Stillwater Associates and its successors, we need to purchase the plant at its fair market value. We have been working diligently to try and identify, retain the appropriate consultant to perform this appraisal that is required both by the agreement and certainly by the state controller when it comes time to execute this contract, being able to demonstrate the fair market value of the improvements on the site. As the board will recall, these improvements are already located on state lands, which are under the regulating district's jurisdiction. Our procurement record will aptly demonstrate the lengths we went to try and identify a qualified consultant. We did identify a qualified consultant in the Black River area, capable and willing to provide these services. And I ask the board's support to approve me to enter an agreement with Varley Appraisal Group for the cost of $5,650 to perform these services. And I'll pause for any questions from the board.
Are there any questions or comments? If not, I'll ask for a motion authorizing an agreement between Hudson River Black River Regulating District and Varley Appraisal Services in the amount of $5,000.
$5,650, Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry, $5,650. Do I have a motion?
I will.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion's carried. Moving on to staff and committee reports. First one, Finance Committee, Mr. DeWitt.
Since everybody has already been here for the Finance Committee, I don't think we really need to go over this, but I need a resolution to contract with Harris Beach PLLC to provide bond counseling service. Are there any questions? If not, could I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Hayes,
I'll second it.
Mr. Reagan, this is not a committee matter. This is a complete board matter. I would note that the board minutes will reflect the same recitation of this proposal as it was announced in the committee.
Okay.
It would be for a contract to enter into a conditionally award bond counsel services to Harris Beach and authorize the executive director to execute a contract not to exceed $30,000 plus approved disbursements. Mr. Hayes has made the motion. Mr. Reagan has seconded. We're looking for a vote.
All in favor? I'm sorry.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Mr. DeWitt. General Counsel's report, Mr. Leslie.
So staff continue to discuss the valuation of the regulating district's 56 feet of head at Conklinville with our appraisal consultant. Likewise, Chief Fiscal Officer, myself, and the Executive Director continue to work with Stillwater Associates to address the expiring reservoir operating agreement at Stillwater. As you just noted, the Executive Director secured the appraisal firm to value that Stillwater hydro plant. The Compliance Officer secured a title company to investigate liens and other UCC filings against that subject property. I had participated in the GOER Equal Employment Opportunity and Workforce Discrimination Training, made mandatory for agency leadership before I went on vacation. And we have addressed 5 FOIA requests during the reporting period. There have been no appeals. Actually, I think this afternoon will probably make that 6. If there are no other questions, that's my report.
Any questions or comments? Excellent. Compliance Officer, Mr. Zicki.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My report can be found on page 110. There are a few items worth noting. I performed the Black River Area Quarterly Compliance Audit. Appropriate measures are in place. We are maintaining accurate documentation and following all required procedures. I am maintaining our weekly vaccination and testing program, and to date we've had 100% compliance among staff. And finally, I am currently monitoring the access permit renewal payment process by completing daily and weekly reconciliations within the permit database and the payment portal. Do you have any questions? If not, that completes my report.
Any questions or comments? Thank you very much. Chief Fiscal Officer, Mr. Minicha.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The CFO report can be found on page 113 of your packet. I'm going to be a little briefer than normal because probably some of you are struggling to understand me here. I just want to talk briefly about a non-financial aspect of the CFO report, which you can find on page 114. This is where we track implementation of recommendations made by the Inspector General in the report issued in April 2020, with the exception of recouping funds where, you know, we have not yet turned over every single possible stone, pebble. All the other remaining recommendations have been fully implemented. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions anybody has.
Oh, okay. That was briefer. Any questions or comments? Okay, if not, thank you very much. We move to our Chief Engineer, Mr. Fulton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My report can be found on page 155. Month of December, we saw slightly above historic average precipitation in the Hudson River area, and about an average of about 125% above historic average precipitation in the Black River area. That all resulted in a near average inflow to Great Sacandaga Lake and about 85% of historic average inflow to Indian Lake, and in the Black River area at Stillwater, about a 94% historic average inflow rate. And currently, our reservoirs are about at Great Sacandaga Lake about 5.7 feet above our target, or 1.6 above target at Indian Lake, and about 5.7 feet above at Stillwater. Sixth Lake and Old Forge are right on target for this time of the year. And both Stillwater and Great Sacandaga Lake are being drawn down just about as rapidly as we can, with maximum releases occurring at Great Sacandaga Lake on a daily basis. And at this point, I don't anticipate any concerns or issues with regard to spring runoff, at least at this point. We don't have quite the snowpack we usually have, but there's still more time to winter left, so not worried about that either, about refilling either. So be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Any questions or comments? Thank you, Mr. Fulton.
Rob, I heard you say that we don't have to worry about snow for Snowville on Tug Hill because it'll show up.
I'm pretty sure it will.
Very good. Board member questions or comments? I want to say I'm never going to run a meeting again with a phone to my ear. What a pain in the neck that's been all been. I can hardly hear. Anyway, resolution for our next board meeting. Oh, I don't have that in front of me. What's the date?
It's March 8th, Mr. Chairman. And I'll note that we're scheduled to be in the Black River area, but as has been the case for a couple of years, COVID might have something to say about that.
Yeah. Well, to be announced. So a motion to have our next board meeting on March 8th to be announced.
Bird?
Second?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Now I need a motion for adjournment, and I can get off the phone.
So moved.
We have a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second?
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Well, thank you for bearing with me through this phone thing. This was terrible, but